Well, good evening and welcome to Space Oddities. Thank you for joining us on this Monday night. If this is your first time watching Space Oddities, thank you, and we hope you will stay and subscribe to our channel. As you regulars will know, we have our normal motley crew of panelists, but I'm delighted to welcome to Space Oddities this evening Mel Quinn, who is the director of Spaceport Cornwall. So good evening, Mel, and thank you so much for being here. And we're going to get around to asking you some questions because we're all intensely interested in the British space industry. And we originally started out on Astro Radio, which was a global internet radio channel for astronomy. And Daz and I did a 2-part series on the whole of the British space industry, which was enormous fun to put together. So I'm hoping that you might be able to fill in some of the gaps about things we might not know. So thank you so much for being here. And apart from Mel, we've got the normal rabble. Good evening, Michael. Good evening, Roger. Good evening, Baz. I'm afraid there'll be no viewers gallery tonight because Rachael is very tired, and she won't be joining us tonight. She's had a few family problems, so I'm afraid no gallery tonight. We will, of course, hold your images over till next week. And thank you so much, viewers, as always, for sending your images in because we love looking at them. And Mel, it may interest you to know the standard that we have in our viewers gallery. A lot of the photos, you would be hard pressed to distinguish them from ones taken by enormous telescopes, such as the skill of our amateur astrophotographers. The images that we have sent in are amazing, aren't they, guys? They really are.
Yeah.
One thing that I would like to say before we move on is that we let you choose the design for the Space Oddities summer T-shirt last week. Just to let you know, we are making progress with that. We think we found a supplier, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can with prices and details of how to get hold of our limited edition T-shirts. We have to say limited edition because if we say limited edition, we can put a $5 on the price. So we don't miss a trick here on Space Oddities. We'd also, of course, like to thank all of you who bought us coffees last week. It all goes into the coffers and helps us do the things that we want to here on Space Oddities. So thank you so much for that. We are also joined this evening by Lou, all the way from America. And he's having technical problems at the moment, but he will be rejoining us shortly. He's had to log out at the moment. Well, we hope you're all well, viewers, and enjoying yourself in this lovely spring weather you're having in the UK. I gather it's rather warm over there. So I think that was just about it. I can't think of anything else that needs to be said at the moment. You're all very welcome, of course. If you have any questions for Mel, please do put them in the live chat window, and we will ask them on your behalf. And if somebody could keep an eye on that, then I'd be very grateful. Yes, Daz, you want to say something?
I was just saying, Lou's probably having lots of problems due to solar flares from that sun behind Roger.
That's probably what it is. Yeah,
it's been very active the last couple of weeks. So we'll blame Roger. Blame Roger.
We've got him back. Welcome back, Lou. We've frightened you from that. Okay. Right, well, Mel, as I said, you're very welcome here on Space Oddities. Thank you for joining us. The first question I'd like to ask you is how did you end up being director of Spaceport Cornwall? Because is space exploration something you were interested in, or was it sort of a more career move?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I will apologize in advance. We've got a house of kids and dogs and other critters running around. So if it gets noisy, that's why. But yeah, no, it's not, I guess, a normal story. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Canada. And I was actually more into aviation and airplanes. That was what I wanted to do. My dad flew airplanes and fought forest fires using water bombers, and that was kind of my ambition was to go down that road. But saying that, I was so lucky where I lived in that because it was so rural and remote. The night sky was just incredible, but also the northern lights. I grew up just most nights through the winter just having northern lights, and I realized how special that was. But it definitely inspired me. And at one point when I was probably about 15, 16, I remember saying to a teacher I wanted to go into astronomy, and And they just looked at me kind of blankly and said, well, there's no careers in that where you are. And that's, full circle. Here I am now. But it took me probably a lot longer than it should have if that teacher said, oh, that's interesting. Why don't we have a look into what's out there? And that's always stuck with me and definitely feeds through to the outreach that I do with young people. So long story short, I ended up actually into economics. I moved to the UK to study, to do my master's here, and I focused on aerospace marketplaces around the world, how the technologies could help economies grow, to create jobs, R&D research, and really advance humanity through new technologies using airspace and aviation, and not so much space. And I was busy. I was brought down to Cornwall as a consultant to help them develop the airport when the council bought it from the MOD. And then Spaceport landed in 2014. And I was initially brought in just to look at the feasibility of using the site and who as a business would use it. It was commercial, right from that outset, it was, we want people to come and use this. Who's out there in the marketplace? What do we need to do? How much money do we need? What are the regulations? So funnily enough, I landed in a job that brought my two worlds together, thinking of, the launch system that we had with Virgin Orbit being an airplane, which I love, plus then the space side of it and all the satellites. So that's how I got here.
Right. And it must have been quite a daunting challenge for you because, with the way the British space industry has been going over the last few years with this sort of rapid expansion and a huge increase in government investment, has it been? I'm sure it's been a most rewarding experience for you, but you must have been quite worried at some point about where it was going.
It's been challenging because since the project started, we've had Brexit, we've had a number of different ministers, definitely, but also prime ministers. We've had a pandemic in it. So as much as the government has always been quite supportive of space, it's the amount of support has changed and fluctuated, and programs have changed, and obviously commercial businesses have come and gone in the industry. So again, going back to my economics, I've leaned on that quite heavily in kind of looking at where the market might go and how we can really enable the site that we have to meet those future needs as well as what we have at the minute.
Right. Okay. And Daz, I think you wanted to ask Melissa something related to that, didn't you?
Yeah, I think basically Melissa's answered it, not getting political or anything like that. It's just unfortunate that the last 3 or 4 years have been a bit of a with Brexit, with COVID and things like that. It really has had a knock-on effect to the space industry and, of course, to everything, really. With the lockdowns and that. But I would like to take this opportunity to give you a big pat on the back, Melissa. You've done really well, especially about since. That is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
But
what would just want to say thank you to Mel for putting Spaceport Cornwall on the map and showing how amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. But putting Nuki on the map, because I didn't know it had an airport. I didn't know Nuki had an airport, and let alone to have such a big runway. But it's just sort of like, this is a bit of a personal question. Coming from Canada and ending up in Cornwall, have you actually been tempted to try Cornwall's salute to astronomy and tried Stargazer's pie?
I have had it. It's not my cup of tea, but I've lived in this amazing county for 13 years now. My girls are from here, so I really get into. It's a unique place, to say the least, and you kind of have to live and breathe it if you're here, especially in the winter when all the crowds go home and it becomes pretty bleak. And I find it just so special, and it's definitely given myself but my team that kind of push to constantly go and meet those challenges, because we believe in this county, and its uniqueness, and that launch in space is just the next chapter to what has been a really innovative history of the steam engine and the mining techniques and this kind of pioneering spirit that we have down here. So I have had the pie. It's not my thing, but I do love a bit of the Cornish culture, definitely.
Last time
and just to explain to people from across the pond, Stargazer's pie is a pie with a crust, but all the pilchers' heads are placed on the top, so they're looking up towards the sky, and so they're called Stargazer pie. Of course, Cornwall, as you've just said, has got a rich heritage, but also in space, because you've got Goonhilly just down the road, and that, of course, is famous for the first transatlantic television signal from Telstar, which is a British satellite. And also it was used for the Apollo, and just recently for Artemis. And I think it was also used for Axiom last night. So yes, that's just down the road.
Isn't the anniversary?
Sorry, Mike.
Isn't the anniversary of Telstar coming up? Is it in the next couple of months? The 60th anniversary.
I suppose it would be. Yeah.
They're good, really good friends. Ian Jones is a close personal friend of mine, and I started out down here just as he bought Goonhilly from BT, and so I feel like we've been through a lot of this together. And it's so incredible to see what Goonhilly are achieving now, and they've just bought 2 sites globally. You know, they're expanding. They've got some amazing contracts, and it's such a thrill to watch them develop. And they actually provided our mobile tracking system for the launch. And, you know, they've always been really close partners of ours and huge supporters, because they are the original, you know, site. And they've opened up a lot of doors for us, as well as Ian just being an incredibly intelligent human. He's been a great mentor for me as well. So yes, a huge nod to Goonhilly, and we love them down there.
Going back to food, Mel. What about a Cornish cream tea?
Yeah, don't talk about the Devon side. We gotta talk about the Cornish side. Yeah, I was slightly disappointed because I was so lucky to be invited to a coronation garden party at Buckingham Palace a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
But the biggest disappointment is they had a cream tea and they did it the Devon way, and I was like, he was the Duchy of Cornwall. How can you do it that way?
What on earth is going on? That's treason.
Yeah.
Can I just ask as well, going back to the spaceport, you opened your Space Systems Operations Facility a couple of weeks ago. Can you talk about that and maybe some of the companies that might be using it?
Yeah, so we have 2 facilities that we built for Spaceport. The first one was our integration facility, and that's where we had basically the payload processing facility for the launch. So the satellites came in one end, went into the clean room to be put in the fairing of the rocket. And then the second phase of that is our operations facility, which, as he said, was just opened a couple of weeks ago. And that has a few smaller clean rooms, lab space, hot desking, workspace. And for that's really just where I want the hub of activity to be on the site. That's where I want people to come together, lots of different kinds of businesses, because that's where the magic happens, is, you know, those type of physical places for people to come together and network and talk to one another about what they're doing. So we have a great kind of diverse first intake into that facility. We have actually Avanti Communications are expanding into it. They're going to keep their site at Goonhilly, but also expand into us. We have a really amazing woman called Heidi and her company called Space Skills Alliance, so building the skills pipeline that we need to kind of meet those gaps that are coming our way if they're not already here. We also have the University of Exeter looking at some of our environmental intelligence and space research. We have Exobotics. We have who else have we actually? I'm trying to not name people we haven't announced yet, which is quite difficult to do.
So nobody's watching.
Space Engine Systems.
Space Engine Systems, yeah. So the Canadian company that are moving in the next couple of weeks. So you'll see a bit more of announcements about exactly what that is. They're coming along. I'm missing somebody big, and now it's been a bit of a mad couple of days. But yeah, there's 10 businesses moving in over the next week. and
Wow.
we're really excited about that. 'Cause,
And just on the back of that, really, is there any access for public? Is there any public areas that can be visited? Maybe anything like that?
Yeah, definitely will be. This is the last week we've had school tours. Since the launch, we've had almost 2 tours a day of schools. So we've really been focusing on the young people. We've hosted a few community events. But until the businesses get in and we get that up and running, the main collaboration space will be open. People can come and say hello and have a nice coffee and spend a bit of time seeing who's there. So that will be definitely on the cards.
Okay.
Melissa, can you talk a little about NASA partnerships or what's in the future for collaborating with NASA?
We don't have anything specific, but we are definitely speaking to them about a few different things that we haven't really publicly talked about. We're obviously supporting what the work that Kuhn and Haley are doing, as mentioned with Artemis, for instance. We're also really we'll see what happens with Virgin Orbit, but we're working on that responsive launch capability for the US government, including NASA in the future. Most of our focus is looking at future programs with ESA, and who then obviously go on to support NASA too.
I've got another one, if I may. Related to Virgin Orbit, Virgin Galactic. What about bringing the Virgin Galactic system over here to take off from Cornwall?
Funnily enough, that was the original conversations way back in 2014, because Virgin Orbit spun out of Virgin Galactic.
Yeah.
So the original conversations with UK space agents were actually how can we provide a capability for Virgin Galactic, but quite quickly we realized, no, let's focus on satellite launch and the regulations we need for that first in the UK before we start thinking about humans.
I was just thinking about customers in the UK, that might be interested in flying out of Cornwall rather than going over to the States to fly with them over there.
Yeah, and I think never say never. I think the UK, we still need to get the satellite launch, right. But we're an airport. We're used to having paying customers coming through on airplanes, and I think the way that technology is going, that will become more frequent in the coming decades for people to go on space flight as well. So we're really interested in human space flight as a kind of more the research, the academic side of it initially. But we'll see. Obviously, we've got a great relationship with Virgin.
It is still a commercial airport, isn't it? The UK.
Yes, and it's busy. It's really busy. It was the fastest growing regional airport before COVID, and that's the beauty of what we're trying to do. We want to integrate launch into that. We think it's a great model because it's not putting all our eggs in the launch basket, and we showed we could do that. If I lost you, my computer's gone on. There you go. So for us, it's just showing that model can work with integrated space activities at a civilian airport.
Okay. I've got a question here from Steve. Hello, Steve. How are you? Steve wants to know, Babysitter's Permission, would you want to go into space yourself, Melissa? And if so, where in particular?
Babysitter's Permission, yes. I of course, I would love to. 100%. For me, I would have to have a reason to do so. I would have to be up there for a specific reason. I'm, quite passionate about the environmental impact of launch and how we can decrease that. So I would like to see a reason for me to go there. But I would probably just, I'm not massively into wanting to go to Mars or anything like that. I think for me, just seeing, something like that behind me, seeing Earth from out there would just be, it's probably one of the biggest dreams that most humans could have. So I think it would be just seeing that.
Yeah. Another question from Chris. What is the timeline for Kernosat?
So Kernosat. So Kerno is the Cornish word for Cornwall. Cornwall has its own language. So that's where that come from. This was an interesting idea I had actually in the first lockdown, which was how do we connect space to a local community and use space to benefit or to maybe help solve a local issue. And we suddenly got funded to do it. And
Wow.
it's a program where we are designing, building. We were meant to be launching, tracking at Goonhilly, and using that data through our school outreach program, all in Cornwall. And the purpose of KernelSat-1 is to monitor the coastal health of the coast of Cornwall. Lots of different projects within that. And so KernelSat-1, we actually are almost complete build on it, and it will go into testing later this summer. And obviously the timeline originally was to go up on the second launch with Virgin Orbit. And we're just obviously waiting, as everybody else is, to kind of see what happens out of that. And if we don't see Virgin Orbit kind of rise from the ashes, then we'll be looking at hopefully launching. I'd like for it to launch in the UK. I really do. The whole kind of vision behind it was launching in the UK, or at least Cornwall. So it will be ready to go later this summer, and we'll hopefully get on something out of the UK in the next year at least.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Mel? Because I'm conscious of the fact
just put it this way. I could talk all night to Mel. Space Cornwall, of course, isn't just a place for launching satellites horizontally, but it's also a space hub stroke teach us a STEM place to teach children and educate them. I understand that the hub is basically oversubscribed. That's for companies to come in and to work in that local area. Is there any room for expansion there?
Yes, it's massive. The site itself, the two buildings I was just talking about earlier, the new one we've just opened, I think we have one office left and one lab left. So we have two spaces still left in that. The whole vision behind it is almost a conveyor belt where companies can come and they'll grow in that space, and then we'll move them on either to a purpose-built facility or to a larger one, or share with Goonhilly as well. Goonhilly has quite, some room down there, and just it's about that diversification and almost that more sustainable business model that looks at not just launch, which is really exciting, and it gets all the interest in media and everybody all excited. But use that to kind of galvanize and to attract in other businesses to the site who are pretty much the bread and butter of what we do. They pay the bills, they keep the site going, and really grow that cluster for local companies as well as companies moving into Cornwall too. So we're really, really excited about that. And you hear all these negative stories, like because Virgin Orbit are in chapter 11, that means the spaceport's dead as well. Well, it's honestly busier than I've seen it up there on the site, because we have all these other businesses. We've had 4,000 school children in a couple months on site. It's noisy.
I can understand. But also you've been in talks, I understand, with Sierra and the Dream Chaser. Any news on that?
So we've been working with them for quite a number of years now, and we've watched them develop and kind of just go, stratospheric in the last year especially. We tend to go and see them in Denver every year around Space Symposium time. So we were just over there, and since we were there the year before, they've hired 1,000 people. Wow. That's the speed that they are just growing. So Dream Chaser, yes, of course, the transport side of it, but also the orbital reef project that they're working on. And for us, that whole, all the Sierra Space kind of relationship development we're working on is to be a landing site for Dream Chaser. And the beauty of that is the missions that are on board, how we're processing them on the ground, maybe even taking part in some of those missions, the experiments, the humans, whatever it might be. And so we're beyond kind of the concept of operations now, and we're working towards more of a feasibility study of how we, we handle the Dream Chaser landing on the site. But we've got the right facilities. We've thought of them the whole way through as we've been designing and building the facilities, make sure that they weren't just bespoke to Virgin Orbit, but also to other space companies in the future, so they can use them as well.
Fantastic. Michael, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, a lot of our viewers are members of astronomical societies and related societies. I was wondering whether there's any scope for trips down to Newquay and maybe Goonhilly for societies to come and see what's going on, come by coach and whatever, and meet up with talk to people at Spaceport Cornwall and that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of interested kind of group tours. They're quite ad hoc, so it's more just approaching us, coming up with the time with the team, and usually Goonhilly are more than happy to do the same. So we don't have anything that you'd find probably online that says click here and book your tour. It's more just reaching out and just saying, hey, we're really interested, and giving us a few options for dates. And we the whole ethos behind our spaceport is it's open, transparent, accessible. It's for the community to come and see what we're all about. So it's important to us that we stand by that, and that by especially people that have an interest in space to come and see it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, Mel, I gather that you are moving on from your current position.
Yeah.
No, listen. I'm sure we've all been in that professional situation where we've done what we can, and we think, oh, I fancy a change. It's time to move. So I think we all know that. I don't think we need to go into your reasons, but obviously we'd like to firstly congratulate you on everything that you've done for Spaceport Cornwall, and we think you've done a fantastic job. We've all been, well, of course, we're British, we follow it, and American, we follow it avidly. What's been going on, and we were obviously, while we were very disappointed with the Virgin Orbit failure, as you said, it's not the end. It doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But obviously, then we'd like to wish you all the best in whatever you do in the future, and we're sure you'll be an equal success at that. So,
thank you. Yeah, it's been a tricky decision.
I'm sure.
But it was one I pretty much made even before the launch. I knew that was going to be kind of the height of what I wanted to do. I reached everything, in this. I've been doing it really for 10 years. So for me, it was okay. And launch is a tricky thing to be part of. It's so incredibly exciting. Of course it is, but it takes a lot, and it basically takes over your whole life and your family's life. With launch windows moving and all the challenges. So for me, it's okay. I think it's the right time. And you see all the kind of negative comments about jumping ship, and it's for me to jump ship, it would mean the ship is sinking, and it's not sinking at all. So
I couldn't actually believe it when I saw the press release. Well,
well, you know what they're like. Nothing travels faster than bad news. I mean, it's just bad news sells, unfortunately.
Yeah, and for us, we've always just kept our heads down and delivered, rather than get stuck into the chat. And so, I mean, the team are amazing, and it's a new chapter for the spaceport as well. It is just the beginning of it all. I'm so proud that I was part of it. I'm proud of what we achieved. But I'm excited. I'm going to stay in the space industry and hopefully hear a little bit more about that. It's totally different, but that's what I love, is a new challenge and learning more and getting stuck into something that is exciting in a new way. So you'll see me still popping up from time to time.
We'd love you to come back in the future, and love you to come back here in the future.
It'll be much. Definitely sign me up.
Can I just mention one of your young ladies at Spaceport Cornwall, Lauren?
Yes.
She's been in the news a lot lately as well. And just like to wish her all the best for the future, because I actually met her at Farnborough last year. So that was good.
I mean, I'm so proud of my team, and they're so passionate about what we do and how we do it. And it's been such an honor and joy to work with them. We're quite a close family, so that's the real hard side of it, is that. But it's Cornwall, it's small, so we'll still bump into each other.
That's right. Astro Nebula says, I loved it so much I bought the t-shirt. There you are. You can't get a better recommendation than that, really.
Thank you.
So,
I know Newquay is near the north coast, but how do you decide which beaches to go to, north or south?
Yeah, it depends on what
beaches are better.
Well, it depends what you want to do. My family are all into surfing, so we live on the north coast for that. My husband picked our daughter up from school today, and they went straight into the sea up, and she caught 8 waves. She said in, and she's
wow.
I mean, what a life that is for an 8-year-old. So we're a north coast family, but I love the south coast as well. It's calmer.
I've spent many family holidays on the Lizard when I was young. We always used to go to Goonhilly every year and go around it. And so I grew up with Goonhilly, and before it was even British Telecom, I was there, and it's always very dear to my heart, that whole area. All right. Well, thank you so much, Melissa. All the best for the future. Thank you for spending your time with us this evening. We'll let you go now and look after your family.
Running wild.
If you've got nothing at all to do on any Monday night, if you've got nothing better to do, you're always welcome to drop in here. We've got the link, so you can drop in any time.
Amazing.
If you've got anything you want to talk to us about, then do drop in. We say this to all our guests. You're always welcome. So,
thank you. And thank you for all the kind comments and words. They really do mean a lot to me, so I appreciate that.
No, they're well earned. They're well earned.
Everybody's been behind you and the Spaceport so much. And,
thank you.
We've never heard anything negative in any way about it. We're all rooting for it, and we want it so much to be a success. Yeah. So if we could do it by the power of thought alone, it would work. But,
okay. Great.
All right, then. Well, we'll let you go. Thank you so much, Mel. And
thank you.
To see you again soon. And very best of luck in whatever you choose to do.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was Mel Quinn, Company Director of Spaceport Cornwall. Thank you to her for joining us on this Monday evening. Where are we? Daz has managed to stay with us, which is great. So I'm glad you managed to stay with us for that, Dal. And I think what we're going to do now is go straight over to Roger for a look at the night sky. So take it away, Roger.
Well, good evening, everyone. Well, I don't know if there's going to be much about the night sky because our astro darkness is about disappeared now.
Yeah, that's true.
So there we go. But that's always is as this time of year. But never mind. Right, so we're coming up through almost the last week of May now. So with the phases of the moon going to first quarter during the weekend, then things might be a bit better. But forecast is not looking too bad. I couldn't get the moon today, but this was what it was like last night, looking all rather thin and.
That's beautiful.
Wow,
lovely image.
Looked rather nice. So while I was doing that, I thought I'd wait up and.
Whoa!
This is how I'm now progressing with my quark.
It's coming on, isn't it?
It's coming on. I've only had it just over a week now, but this was yesterday.
Wow.
This weekend I was helping Bath astronomers and Simon Holbeck, and we were getting all rather excited because there's prominences almost completely around the perimeter, and they're blooming everywhere.
Because they thought the sun was slowing down, but it seems to be picking up again big time. As you said, your images have shown so many prominences. Fantastic.
That's a lovely one as well.
Here's one. This is one I took earlier today of one of the groups, and here's another one from today with the groups. And yes,
the rotation is left to right here. Do you know?
Pardon?
The rotation, the solar rotation, is it left to right in this image?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, so this large spot here could be rotating into play and give us a run for our money at some point.
Yeah. Yes, be aware of more flare outs and stuff coming to our area. Yeah. So we shall see.
Yeah, because not only you seeing the prominences on the limb, you can see all these filaments, which again are prominences of arches of plasma and things like that. Some of them are really long.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Mahusive.
Yep.
Mahusive, yeah.
Yes.
So later on last night, we were obviously watching the launch, and I managed to get the International Space Station come over, image on the left, and about 25 minutes or so later, Crew Dragon appeared, and as you can see, they're on a slightly different course. It wasn't quite as bright. It's probably because it was in a lower Earth orbit, not to catch the, and obviously the size of the craft as well was also not able to reflect as much light. But it did traverse over quite quickly, so I didn't really get much of a warning on that. But I did see something coming up, and I thought that must be about it. So on went the camera, and I'm glad to have caught it.
Yeah, because I did the same, and I know Michael did the same. Well, several people that we know all did the same. With the International Space Station, it actually flew over as the Axiom was launching. So I was stood in the garden with my pad in one hand, watching the launch, trying to take photographs of the International Space Station as it flew over. I managed to catch a few, but as you can see, and as Roger said, we're not getting the darkness now. You can see that it's still quite light.
Yes.
When the Axiom 2 came over, the Crew Dragon capsule, as you said, it just appeared. I think it was because with my case, is that it was quite murky, and I think it looks as though it was quite murky where you are.
Very sort of hazy cloud.
Yeah, and it appeared out of nowhere. And the thing is, you couldn't miss it. As you said, it wasn't as bright, but it was one of the brightest things that was moving. But it was just moving so fast. As you said, it was in a lower orbit at the time, and it soon passed over. But yeah, it was great fun catching them. But yeah, very nice, Rod. Very nice.
Well done.
Okay. Right. So onwards with the weekly what's in the night sky, but or the almost night sky. We've obviously got Venus still shining quite nicely up in the sky. Mars becoming quite small and dim now, unfortunately, and with the lack of astronomical darkness, that doesn't help. But we're now getting the summer triangle of Altair, Vega, and Deneb now coming up into the night sky, and obviously now with the Scorpius now appearing now from 10 o'clock, at which this screenshot was taken, we will be seeing the galactic core around about midnight. So that should be quite interesting. So as you can see, it's gradually appearing, and this was what James Webb had published. Somebody had wished a comet to be recorded, and this is what it had managed to get. It's just basically a blue, a monochrome image, which was just coloured blue.
Right.
But
nice.
It wasn't too bad. This was roughly where are we? 300 million kilometers away.
Wow.
Main Belt Comet, and this was taken on the 8th of September last year in the near infrared camera.
Beautiful.
And this is what we managed to get from the spectroscopy of it.
Oh, those water and CO2 spikes are rather prominent, aren't they?
Yeah.
Just a tad.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
I wonder what the others are.
I don't know.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so that is what I have for you this evening.
Thank you very much, Roger. That's very kind.
In the chat, Astro Nubly, I think he's referring to your first image of the sun. He says he can see a duck on the top. Now, I don't know what he's been smoking. Obviously gone a bit...
the one before that.
That's it.
Oh yeah. Oh, I
Yeah, we
see.
can-
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
I thought he was
yes,
going a bit
absolutely.
Bodmin.
No,
Yes.
we see that as well, Astro. Don't listen to Daz. We're not suggesting for a moment that you want to be involved in any be involved in any illicit substances, but
Yeah.
there you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I have been trying
He
to
got
do
a
a
bit
time lapse
Bodmin.
of some of the activity, but I don't think I got quite the settings right, and it needs more practice. But there
What
we
are
go.
the circular features there, Roger?
What, the sunspots?
No, there's the brighter circles with the white dot in the middle.
Those are the sunspots. This is what Kevin Earp does. He inverts them.
Ah, right.
So what is black is now white.
Ah, you inverted it. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So
Okay.
instead of a black hole, it's white holes.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. All right then. So, as I said last week and this week, thank you so much for supporting us and buying us coffees. And I'll just pop this up on the screen in case anybody wants to buy us a coffee. If you'd like to buy us a coffee, all the money goes to help maintaining the channel and allowing us to expand. Then just scan the QR code and that will take you straight to buymeacoffee.com, where you can buy us a coffee, and we're always very grateful. Because we have got expenses to pay as much as anybody else does, so it all helps and allows us to expand and do the things that we want to. In case you missed it earlier, we will be bringing you more concrete news of the T-shirts soon. They're not made out of concrete, don't worry. And we will. We think we found a supplier, and we will bring you more definite news of that when we've sorted all that out. But you will have them for summer, I promise. Okay, I've just got a couple of news stories I'd like to run by you. I'll put the QR code up again towards the end of the show, and there've been a couple of really surprising things this week. First of all, we got a new supernova in the Whirlpool galaxy M101, and there's the galaxy with the supernova arrowed. So obviously this came completely without warning, as supernovae most often do. And one of our viewers has been kind enough to send in some photos that he's taken of the supernova, and this is them. And so thank you, Martin Bracken, otherwise known as City Space Astro. Thank you so much for sending these in. These are the best that I've certainly seen. And this tracks the supernova from the 16th of May to the 21st and 22nd. And as you can see, it's brightening, getting steadily brighter. So presumably it hasn't reached its peak yet, peak brightness. I don't have much more information about the supernova other than that at the moment. Does anybody have any more info about it? Do we know what type it was? Type 1, type 2, anything like that? No. Well, this is...
No, sorry.
No, its official designation is SN2023IXF. And thank you very much to Martin. Excellent images, Martin, if I might say so. So if you take any more, Martin, please don't hesitate to mail them to us. We're very grateful to you. Much appreciated. So that's the new supernova in M101. Supernovae don't happen very often, and that we can observe anyway. And there hasn't been one in our own galaxy for a few hundred years that we've been able to observe. There might occasionally, I suppose, be ones that are obscured by dust clouds that we haven't seen. But we're waiting for a bright supernova to go off in our galaxy. And then we should learn a lot about what happens to those destinations of stars at the end of their lives. Or in the case of a type 1, of course, it's a binary system with a white dwarf. But we don't know what type this is yet. So hopefully by next week we'll find out some more, and we'll let you know exactly what this new supernova is all about. And thanks again to Martin. So more news this week. Yes, Betelgeuse is at it again. You may remember the dimming period that Betelgeuse went through in 2019, 2020, where its brightness subsided substantially, and it was quite a prolonged dimming of the star. We know that Betelgeuse is a variable star. It does have natural cycles of brightening and dimming over a 400-day period, but this was unlike anything ever seen before. and the dimming has been put down to one of two possibilities. One of them is that Betelgeuse, as a red giant star coming towards the end of its life, ejected a huge cloud of plasma, which cooled into dust, and that enormous dust cloud obscured its light, leading to its dimming as seen from the Earth. That's one scenario. The other one, which has come up recently, which I believe astronomers are slightly more keen on, is that in fact what was obscuring the surface of Betelgeuse was just a massive sunspot. And you have to remember that Betelgeuse is many times the size of our sun. So that sunspot, the sunspots that we see on our own sun are more often than not bigger than the Earth. So the one on Betelgeuse that could have dimmed its brightness to that extent must have been absolutely huge and covered a large part of the star. Now, is this normal behavior? We don't really know. We know that Betelgeuse is probably going to go supernova sometime soon, where soon means any time within the next 100,000 years. But the media, of course, were full of stories about the supernova of Betelgeuse being imminent, and they're still talking about that. It's nonsense, of course, because when a star does go supernova, the changes obviously happen at the core, first of all, and it can take literally thousands of years for those changes to propagate to the outer layers of Betelgeuse. And so far, astronomers have seen nothing on Betelgeuse that indicates it's imminently going to go supernova. And they're still saying it could happen between now and 100,000 years. But this latest episode is getting a few people scratching their heads, because this time Betelgeuse has not dimmed, it's got brighter. Over the last couple of months, its brightness has increased by 50%. So it's now a huge brightening episode with Betelgeuse. At the moment, nobody has got an explanation for what we're seeing. We don't really have any prolonged studies of red giant stars at the end of their lives to compare Betelgeuse to see if this is normal behavior for an aging star. But what we do know is that Betelgeuse has got 50% brighter over the last couple of months. We don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know what's causing it. So, everybody's just madly studying it at the moment and trying to come up with a reason. Now, it could be that after the dimming period, if you like, the plasma that was radiated outwards has settled back onto the surface, and perhaps there's been some sort of reaction there. The cooler plasma returning to the surface of a hotter star. Has that caused some sort of outburst, some sort of brightening? We don't know. That's one theory at the moment. I think it's the only theory at the moment. But anyway, we will find out. Betelgeuse going through this brightening. We'll keep you posted and let you know if anything more happens. But it hasn't stopped brightening, so we can expect it to carry on for a while, I think.
Yeah, because there's also a process. Sorry, carry on, Lou.
What is the period of dimming and brightening? I think someone's
400 days normally.
400 days. So the rotation period of Betelgeuse.
Yeah.
Do we know that?
Not off the top of my head. Perhaps one of our viewers will be kind enough to look up the rotation period of Betelgeuse. Anybody know that, or can find the information pretty quickly?
Oh, we'll see if we can find out for
you. Jack, by the way, in the comments, thank you, Jack, for that. It's a Type 1a, so we are talking about a binary system where a white dwarf has consumed some of the star and has sent it over the Chandrasekhar limit, which means that there's been a massive thermonuclear explosion on the star. And thank you for that, Jack. I couldn't find that when I looked earlier, so there we are. And I don't know what were you going to say about the rotation period, Lou?
Well, in other words, if it's if what we're seeing is a massive sunspot rotating into view, then it seems like that would need to be in synchronization with the rotation period.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just looking now.
It's 30 years.
30 years.
Yes.
There we are.
30 years. Oh, it's a bit different.
That's a long.
Because you also get the process called outer shell burning, don't you?
Yes, you do.
where it burns off the hydrogen and starts to burn helium, the pressures and heat grows again, and it starts to burn the hydrogen that's on the outer shell now, which then again causes it to pulsate. So it could be going through a phase of outer shell burning. It's all physics stuff and all that. So these stars can behave very, very strangely. But of course, we've had all the hype in the papers and things like that again, saying it's going to go. I mean, if it goes supernova, all well and good, because it'll be something for us to watch. But it's not going to blow your hat off. So
but it should be.
Don't worry too much about it.
I just can't imagine how that would be brilliant if that. But there's no indication that this is a star that's imminently going supernova at all. So so there you are.
The sky won't be the same without it.
No, that's true. That's very true.
Nor would Orion.
Yeah, Orion be missing his shoulder. That must be painful.
That's right.
Yeah. So there you are. So thank you. By the way, I didn't say it earlier. Thank you, viewers, for the questions that you asked Melissa. Very kind of you, and thank you for making her so welcome. And thank you for your lovely comments about Melissa and her work. So there we are. Sorry, I meant to say that earlier. Now, what else has been in the news this week? Well, there's this, of course. NASA have selected Blue Origin to build the lunar lander for the Artemis 5 mission. I can see you're very thrilled about that, Michael. And I think this is the only picture that we have of it, and there've been no cutaways, there've been no technical details, there've been no mock-ups of the interior, nothing. This is the only image, and I really hope NASA didn't make the decision based on just looking at this one image. So this is what the lunar lander for Artemis 5 looks like. Now, just to remind viewers who may not know, Artemis 3 plans to be the mission to put humans back on the moon, and meant to be around 2025. 2026. Personally, I think it will be later than that, but anyway. And then there'll be Artemis 4 and then Artemis 5. Now, at the moment, SpaceX are contracted for the 3 and 4 landings with their lunar Starship, and this is going to be taking over for Artemis 5. It's a $3.4 billion contract, of which Blue Origin are contributing half towards, and this is what the lander looks like. If you were familiar with the previous entry from Blue Origin and the national team in the competition to win the contract for the first Artemis landing, then you will know that this is a completely revamped design from Blue Origin's original design, where they ludicrously had a door and a ladder that was 20 feet off the ground. So this is a much better idea. As you can see, the astronauts are well down at the bottom of the vehicle, and there's a short staircase to the ground. And this is what the design looks like. Now, personally, I'm really surprised that Dynetics didn't get the job, because the Dynetics lander does not need any additional infrastructure built. It can launch on a heavy lift rocket, and it will be adaptable for most lunar terrains. But this is what NASA have gone with. And to get this to work, there's going to have to be a whole separate infrastructure built to get this lander to the moon and onto the surface. So to me, anyway, it's a real shock that Blue Origin have got this. And considering Blue Origin have been going for 22 years and have so far managed to get nothing into orbit, let alone anything else in space, it's always a big surprise to me when they win contracts based on nothing, basically, no past experience in space itself. But anyway, there are greater minds than mine that make these decisions. So, NASA must know what they're doing. No, Astronebula is not a sex toy this time. It's a proper lunar lander, and I think we'll have to wait and see how this pans out. Does anybody have any thoughts on this on the panel, or in viewers? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, as you said, it was a bit strange. I'm just trying to look at this image of, and as you said, this is all we've got. And of course, they've decided to call it Blue Moon. Now, that confused me because I knew they already had a Blue Moon lander already in the pipeline. And a lot of the pictures that have been associated with this news story is of the old lander, but it's a robotic lander called Blue Moon, which can actually it actually deploys satellites as well as land on the moon, and then it can deploy rovers and science packages. And it's but it can be adapted, they reckon, to carry astronauts if they need to. But that was already in the cards, and that was announced back 2017, 2018. It was part of the package of the original when they went through the original human landing system contract when they put up all their ideas. But when that was cancelled, they decided they were going to carry on with that on their own. But that is called Blue Moon. Now, this is called Blue Moon, but this is Blue Moon Mark II. So they're not very good on thinking of new names for these landers.
Yeah.
But the idea is now that this will work in tandem with a tug, which will be made by, because this is a conglomerate of companies, as you said, Andy. And I think it's Lockheed Martin will be building the tug, which will actually be the thing that travels between Earth and the moon, and that will be refueled in low Earth orbit and then sent back to refuel the lander. Because one of the things with this is it's fully reusable, whereas in their original bid, the actual legs and the stand that it's actually on was to be left behind. And one of the things is always everything has to be reusable. But what they're going to do is also they're going to use the Blue Moon Mark I to send ahead of any moon landings to designated landing sites where it can deliver payloads, and they'll be ready there for when any humans, when the human lander turns up.
Yes, in fact, if I can just interrupt there a moment. Blue Origin have said that they are hoping to mount this so-called Pathfinder mission to the moon next year. So they have got an awful lot of work to do before then. But they are saying that they're going to try landing, an early version of this lander on the moon, uncrewed, obviously, next year. So that'll be interesting to see if they actually do that.
Yeah. Okay, then it's a watch and see scenario.
By the way, this image shows the lander in comparison to Starship in terms of size. You can see it's just a bit less than half the height of Starship, but it's still a big vehicle. This is
16 meters tall, isn't it?
Something like that.
16
so
meters.
it's not the Apollo lunar module. It's a lot bigger than that. But anyway, there we are. That's Blue Origin have won the contract, so congratulations to them. And there we are.
Just briefly, that Artemis 3 and 4 will go direct to the lunar surface.
Yes.
And Artemis 5, according to the press conference announcing this award, will be the first mission to dock
with the Gateway.
The lunar gateway orbit.
The Gateway, yeah.
Yeah, so they better pull their finger out, starting building that then as well, because that's another bit of the infrastructure that has to be built. So it's going to be a busy few years if they manage to do everything that they say they're going to do over the next few years. It's going to be a very, very busy time for lunar exploration and a thrilling time, and we will cover it all here on Space Odysseys, of course. So there you are. Okay, right. Well, what I would like to do now is hand you over to Lou, who's going to talk to us about the Moon of the Week. And as you may know, we've started a series on Space Odysseys called Moon of the Week. And this week, it's the turn of Jupiter's volcanic moon, Io. And it doesn't look like your presentations are loaded, Lou.
Oh, I loaded them both up. Let's see.
You left, didn't you?
Oh, is that? Oh, so they.
Yeah, so they did. If you leave, they disappear as well. Otherwise, they'd be little orphan
Fair.
presentations, bless them.
All right,
So,
give me just a second here.
yeah, okay. So if you have any suggestions, viewers, as to what moon you'd like to see us look at as Moon of the Week, we did Enceladus last week, and any other moons that you would like to see us look at. I've got a few ideas for some strange moons that you may not have heard of for next week, and we will do our best to accommodate them, because obviously the solar system has got a huge variety of moons, and I think one of the big shocks of the first 50 years of our reconnaissance of the solar system has been just how diverse and strange and wonderful the moons are. So let's now turn you over to Lou, and he's going to tell you all about this week's Moon of the Week, which is Io.
Yes, fascinating moon, unique in the solar system in that it has more volcanic activity than any other solar system object, including the Earth. So let's explore this. Well, we have to start at the beginning. That's what Glenda the Good Witch said, right? So
Right.
the discovery of Io, along with the other Galilean moons, was in 1610 when Galileo pointed his 2-inch refractor towards Jupiter. And initially, he saw 3 what he called stars near Jupiter. But as he kept observing, those 3 stars turned into 4 and were moving in the wrong direction, as Jupiter would have been going through the sky, and seemed to be orbiting Jupiter. So this was peculiar. And originally, he called these Medicean stars after a group, the Medicis, I guess, who were sponsoring him. And later, as he was aware of Kepler's laws, and he was able to chart their orbits, and it became pretty well established that these were moons of Jupiter. And so he made very detailed maps of these, and he published these in his Sidereus Nuncius, which is translated into either the Starry Message or the Starry Messenger. And for those of you who are amateur astronomers, you know this as the name of a familiar site where you can go to buy used telescope equipment. So on the left here, you see the title of the Sidereus Nuncius book, which not only had the Jupiter and its moons in it, but observations of Venus and the phases and cratering of the moon. And down below Galileo's picture here, you see a simulation that was done at Goddard Space Flight Center going back to 1610, January 7th, to see the positions of the moons and just to see what they look like through when we can simulate them. And it lines up pretty nicely.
Yeah. And this, of course, started all the trouble that Galileo got himself into.
Oh, he got himself into a whale of trouble, but he was smart. He said, all right, I will stay quiet for a while. So
he was smart and sponsored by some very rich people.
Well, that's true too. Unlike his colleague Jeremiah, not Horrocks, it was I've just forgotten. I dress up as him in Halloween every year. Who was burned at the stake?
Giordani Bruno.
Thank you, Giordani Bruno. He did not recant, so he got what was coming to him.
Yeah.
Now, from Io, I show you these 2 maps of Europe, and you might say, "What the heck is going on here?" But it was realized that by timing the events of the moons going in and out of Jupiter's shadow, you could use them as a clock to provide realistic time at different parts of the Earth. So you had a method for determining longitude, and it turns out, and Galileo knew this, and in fact Giovanni Cassini took Galileo's tables and modified them a little, just made very, very precise observations. so that they could actually modify the maps of Europe, finding that they were off by hundreds of miles, in some cases, the distance between two cities.
That's amazing. I never heard that. That's amazing.
Yes.
Wow.
Now, the story gets even more interesting because Cassini had a student who was working on a problem. And the problem was that these moons didn't go in and out of Jupiter's shadows at regular intervals. They seemed to lag behind in some cases and then move forward in some cases in time. So it wasn't a nice, smooth, periodic event. Cassini and most of the people of the day had believed that the speed of light was infinite. But his students said, you know, I think I found a correlation between the timings of these moons moving too far forward when Earth was near Jupiter and moving too far behind when Earth was away from Jupiter. And he challenged Cassini to demonstrate that he could predict the time of the emergence of one of the moons from Jupiter's shadow. And Cassini said, well, you can't really do that. No one knows what the problem is. And he did. And so that was the first evidence that light had a finite speed. So all kinds of interesting history that get involved with the moons of...
Amazing. I shall have to read up on that a bit more. It's Linda Morabito.
So that was the discovery of Io. But the discovery of volcanoes on Io happened in 1979 with Voyager 1 data. This was a navigation image that was taken and had to be blown up quite a lot. And it was noticed by one of the staff at Jet Propulsion Labs that there are these two features on the moon. One is Loci and one is Tvishtar. I think Tvishtar is on the edge there. Yeah. Loci on the top. And the first evidence that Io had active volcanism. So here's her picture with the famed image sitting beside the Voyager engineering model out at Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So these images of volcanoes on Io then started to be observed quite frequently. And Voyager, this is too small. I'm sorry, this little article I have on the side, this is actually an abstract of a paper by John Pearl and others at Goddard Space Flight Center, just discussing the infrared instruments observations of these hot areas. And if you could read it, which you can't, at the bottom it said, well, perhaps there's some reason to believe this might be evidence of sulfur volcanoes. We're not sure yet. And of course, it turned out that they were.
And of course, when she discovered this, she was a junior navigation engineer, and she'd been asked to do some work on star tracking with the spacecraft. And she enhanced the image of the Voyager had taken of the sky to enhance the stars, but it also had the effect of enhancing this image of Io. And if you look at the one on the limb, the volcano on the limb, at first she thought that it was another moon behind Io, because if you look at it, it does look like it's another body beyond Io. So she had to check and make sure, and it was only when she checked and found out that there was no other moon or other body or asteroid or anything due to be behind Io that they realized that in fact it could be a volcanic plume.
Right, you are, Andy. And it turns out that Brad Smith and other senior members of the team were on a bit of a hiatus. They'd been working, 24-hour days during the encounter period. And so they had to wait for them to get back to see the image and verify that, in fact, it was.
Really? But can you imagine having that on your CV? So what have you done with your life? Oh, I discovered the first body beyond the Earth with active volcanoes. I mean, that's a brilliant thing to have on your curriculum, isn't it? It really is.
I had something somewhat similar happen to me when I was out at JPL for
Yeah.
Uranus encounter. I was receiving data from the spacecraft and calibrating it every day, every night. Spacecraft didn't care what time of day it was, so I'm there, very, very late. Nobody else is in the building. And I had built up quite a number of spectra from the IRIS instrument. And so I decided to see if I could tamp down the noise a bit and just average them all together, get a global average infrared spectrum of Uranus. And I did that. And as I looked at it, I saw a little bump at 729 wave numbers, which is the feature for C2H2 acetylene that we had discovered on Jupiter and Saturn. So I thought for a minute, it looked like it was a little above the noise. So I circled it, wrote C2H2, and put it on, I don't know if it was Virgil Cundy's desk or one of the COIs. And it turned out it was.
Wow.
It also turned out that I didn't get referenced for the discovery, but that's
what a shame.
This is how these things work.
Oh, well done, Lou. That's a claim to fame.
There you go. So what is this moon, Io? It is one of the 4 Galilean moons. It orbits closest to Jupiter at about something like 4 Jovian diameters. And so because of its close in positioning with Jupiter, it's always in Jupiter's magnetic field. And it has great tidal forces on it, which are believed to be the source of the energy underneath the surface that produce these volcanic plumes. The surface of Io is pot-marked, but not like some of the other moons, such as Callisto, which has lots of craters. And that's because this volcanic material falls down on the surface and kind of repaves the surface. Surface is also kind of interesting colors, red, oranges, yellows, and that is the irradiation of sulfur compounds on the surface, giving it that interesting color.
Wow.
Just another comparison of Io's size to the Earth and to our moon, and some data on Io for those of you who are interested in such things.
It's still quite a cold temperature, isn't it?
Oh, yes. It has essentially no atmosphere. And so sometimes, of course, it's orbiting in front of Jupiter, where it does have some sunlight to heat the surface. But sometimes it goes into Jupiter's shadow, as we just discussed for the timing of the speed of light. And when that happens, these sulfur compounds that are in what I'll just very loosely call its atmosphere, it's quite tenuous, so you have to stretch a little to call it that. But nevertheless, these gases are above the surface, and they kind of freeze out onto the surface when the Io goes into the shadow of Jupiter. So it's a fascinating dynamic. Not only is the surface dynamic, but the atmosphere is dynamic. It's a fascinating place.
But wouldn't you expect a highly volcanic world to be hot on the surface?
And it is in those hot spots.
Right.
But because there's no atmosphere to really...
No, so we're talking about the mean temperature.
Right.
Yeah. Because those hot spots must be really hot. So much energy there.
Yes, and I had a figure for that.
Was it about 600, 650, something like that?
Well, I think in Fahrenheit. You guys think in centigrade, I'll bet. But I was going to say 700 or 800 Fahrenheit. But yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah.
So these are some images from the Keck Observatory. And what you see in the upper left is Keck, upper left, right, is Keck observing Io at 2.2 microns in the infrared. And this is done with adaptive optics. In the lower left, we see Io observed by Keck at 3.5 microns. And so we're seeing different features in the image because you're observing at different wavelengths. In the upper right, that is a Galileo image. So now the Galileo spacecraft is up close and personal to Io and can snap very high resolution images. But it's amazing to see what we can do with adaptive optics in these two images on the left, because the image in the lower right is what Keck observes without adaptive optics turned on.
That's a hell of a difference.
It's really an amazing technology. It was developed or thought of first as a tool for astronomy. It was felt that it could not be done. So the idea and any planning that had gone on went over to the military. The military developed it, and then it came back to the astronomical community. It's a rather interesting story. Some other images of Io. These are all spacecraft images. Of course, Galileo got up very close, very high spatial resolution. Cassini flew by Jupiter and made a number of measurements and observations of Jupiter on its way to Saturn, and was able to take this rather distant view of Cassini in the lower part of the screen there. New Horizons flew past Jupiter. Most of our deep space missions get a gravity assist from Jupiter, so there we are. And cut this beautiful image, very high resolution, with a very nice plume on the edge here. In fact, two others. You can see one just over the terminator and one just over the edge at 9 o'clock. And then, of course, Voyager, this famous image of a plume off the limb here, just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, that New Horizons image. There's a GIF of that animated, which is quite amazing. You can find on the internet, showing that plume squirting up into the air. It's quite amazing.
I thought about, I'm not sure if it was this image, or maybe it was another image that where I had some video, and then I thought, wait, I can't play video on this, so I have to figure out how to do that for our next.
You just need to share your screen, Lou, and play it as a shared screen. That's all you need to do.
Okay, we'll do that for next time. So yes, the headline story for Io is that it has volcanoes. And, this is a mapping of the volcanic activity over a period of 5 years on Io, just showing the, essentially the breadth of coverage on the surface.
They're everywhere, aren't they? Absolutely everywhere.
They appear to be.
Yeah.
However, if you'll notice, if you draw a straight line down right through 180 degrees here, they're a little more populated on the left-hand side than on the right.
Yeah.
And the left-hand side in these images faced away from Jupiter. And so there's some going on there.
Uh-huh.
So what's causing all this? It is believed that the heat, the energy for the volcanism is generated by the tidal friction orbiting Jupiter so close. And the question is, do you have a detached mantle or not? Or do you have some deep tunneling into the deep mantle that would produce channels up to the surface, or something kind of in between in the lower right, kind of a magma sponge it's called, that would provide near surface reservoirs for magma. And it's unclear right now what the mechanism is, but these are some possibilities that are being considered. So when the volcanic activity happens, it spews out a lot of SO2 into the atmosphere, sulfur dioxide. Mm-hmm. And you can see the sulfur dioxide over time dissipate. I think this is one of those animations, dissipate. And you can also, that dissipation is partly due to ultraviolet radiation breaking up SO2 into SO and O. And so we see sulfur monoxide as well in the atmosphere. So there's an atmospheric chemistry going on with the ultraviolet radiation from the sun. These are images from Juno, which is orbiting Jupiter as we speak. A visible image at the top, and 4 infrared images, again, showing the, the plethora of hotspots or volcanoes on Io. So I went to the planetary decadal survey to see what I could find on future exploration goals for Io. This is done by every space and earth science division every 10 years to say, what are our goals? What do we want to do in the next 10 years? What are our scientific priorities? And so here they are. These are this is the leading slide from the presentation from the committee on Io, and here are some of the panel members. And here are the questions that they'd like to answer. What is the interior composition and structure of Io? What is its surface chemistry like? We saw those interesting colors on the surface, we believe from irradiated SO2. But there's also SO, and there's some thought that there may be other molecular species. What, in fact, are the tectonic processes that cause the volcanism? It's the age of the surface and the cratering times, the atmospheric dynamics. The surface is dynamic, the atmosphere is dynamic. What is its composition and heat flow and mass? And then, of course, the interaction with the Jovian magnetosphere. So how do you answer all those questions?
Well, you've got to send something there, haven't you?
Well, that's the goal. And so we've launched JUICE to the Jovian system. However, JUICE doesn't have any science goals for Io.
No.
It's largely Ganymede and Callisto, maybe a little Europa, but of course Europa Clipper is going to take care of that. So we really don't have any missions in the near-term future that will at least go to Io. We have ground-based telescopes, we have space-based telescopes in near-Earth proximity, but no missions to Io in the planning.
And of course, the thing is about a world like Io, studying those volcanoes will give us lots of clues as to the volcanoes on our own planet, and put them in context more. So, it's not just science for Io, it's science for the Earth as well.
Yeah, you'd think the people of Hawaii would chip in a little more for a mission to...
Yeah, they're too busy for testing
one.
against the telescope, I think. So.
Oh, well, there's that.
Yeah. Or discovering Jupiter and Saturn moons. Yeah. Steve in the chat said, I would have thought that the abundance of volcanoes would be along the equatorial zone where the most tidal movement would be, but they don't seem to. Well, in response to that, when you just showed, Lou, the infrared images, if you looked at them, all the volcanoes were on the darker side. The one with the red, that's it. You see, all the volcanoes seem to be massed on the darker side. Well, of course, that's the side that would be facing Jupiter. So they're literally being pulled out all over the place. And I suppose as it rotates, that could possibly actually account for why they all appear on one side. Because as it rotates, those volcanoes, although they're sort of probably calming down a bit, are still hot. So they could be all on that side, whereas on the other side, they're just going into the dark side of the, to the facing side to Jupiter. I'm just my thoughts. I don't know.
Good ideas. There's another variable here, and that is libration. Of course, we know our own moon is, we have lunar libration because of its tilt and its eccentric orbit. And the same is true for Io. So you're going to get some dissipation of any local impact at various latitudes on the moon because of that. And it's both longitudinal and latitudinal libration.
Yes, and
and also you've got I was just going to say, you've also got the resonance, haven't you, with the first three moons, where they all line up, and of course that'll cause even more tidal forces from the outer moons on IO as well. So it's been really.
So Ian
tortured.
wants to know: doesn't IO get warped by tidal forces? Well, yes, it does. But it sort of springs back, if you like. It's not a permanent warping. It's stretched and squeezed in its orbit, but it's not so severe that it will make any permanent changes to IO, I don't think. Okay, right. So, was that your last slide, Lou?
Yep, that's it. That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Can I just sorry, can I just add to this, because I find IO absolutely fascinating, as Lou said. And one of the things I discovered is, I'll just read this quickly. The discovery of active volcanoes on Io led the IAU to revise the naming convention that had been lined up for the features on Io, and to choose instead names of mythical and to choose instead names of mythical blacksmiths and fire and sun, thunder and volcano gods and heroes. For example, of the erupting volcanoes, Prometheus is a god who stole fire to give to humans. Chwastar is named from a sun god in the Sanskrit epics, and Misabi is a Japanese volcano deity. Eruptions have now been documented at about 100 sites, of which a few, such as Prometheus, are persistent, and some others, such as Chwastar and Misabi, have erupted on several occasions. Now, these names are also given to the plumes. And it says here the Prometheus and Misabi plumes are a different sort of plume, because obviously the Vashti are named after volcanoes, volcanic from actual volcanoes. It says in this case the plume does not originate at a volcanic vent, but instead as at the advancing front of a lava flow. In this situation, the hot lava vaporizes the sulfur dioxide surface frost, as Lou mentioned. When it falls down, it gets frozen and it forms a frost. And the overridden surface. It is that forms the plume, which becomes visible as an expanding gas condenses to frost particles again. Plumes of this kind are mainly sulfur dioxide with a little or no magma, and form a high albedo deposit where they fall. Many such white blotches are visible, especially in the Jupiter-lit night side area. So yeah, this when you look into this, and it's a fascinating little moon. So thanks for that, Lou. That was fascinating.
And we'll have another moon of the week next week. I'm not quite sure what it will be yet, but we'll take you on a tour of another moon of the solar system next week. Okay, as time is now getting on, Lou, would you mind delaying your solar system presentation until next week?
Absolutely. No
Thank
problem.
you very much. That's great. Thank you. All right, then. I think that just about wraps things up for tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you to those of you who've scanned the code and bought us coffees tonight. That really is much appreciated. Helps us keep going and expand and do things that we want to do. And it's been fantastic having you watch us tonight. And we will be back next week. And our great thanks to Melissa Quinn for being our guest tonight, director of Spaceport Cornwall. And we had a fascinating chat with her, for those of you that I think missed it, who got here late. But you can, of course, catch up on our channel anytime you want to. So from all of us here at Space Odysseys, keep looking up. Clear skies to everybody. Thank you all so much for your support. We'll be back at the same time next week, of course. So from Michael, from Roger, from Daz, from Lou, and myself, we'd like to wish you a fantastic week. Stay safe, take care of each other, and we will see you next week here again on Space Odysseys. So from us, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.